If you have ever sat at a family dinner, watching everyone laugh and pass the bread, and perform the version of normal they have rehearsed for decades, while a storm of dysfunction was raging just beneath the surface of every smile, and you were the only one at the table who had the audacity to name it, I need you to stay with me right now. Because you know exactly what happened next. The room went cold. The smiles didn't disappear, they just hardened, and within seconds the target shifted from the problem to you. You became the problem. You were labeled difficult, dramatic, the one who always has to stir things up, the one who ruins everything. And somewhere between that dinner table and right now, you started to believe it. You started to wonder why your brain couldn't just let it go, why you couldn't just smile and pass the bread like everyone else. I'm Silas, and today we are looking at the raw data behind your isolation, because here is what the science actually says. You are not the black sheep, you are the family system auditor. And your inability to ignore the lie is not a character flaw. It is a sign of something your family never had the resolution to understand. It is called high-fidelity integrity, and it is running in your hardware whether you chose it or not. Let's start with the system itself. In the laboratory of the self, we recognize that every family unit is a biological system. And like every biological system, it is hardwired to seek homeostasis. Think of it like a thermostat. The family's entire operating function is to keep the internal temperature stable, consistent, predictable. The critical detail that most people miss is this: the system does not care if the temperature is healthy. It only cares that the temperature stays the same. A family can be running at a toxic, dysfunctional baseline for generations, and the system will still fight with everything it has to maintain that exact temperature. Because to the system, familiar equals safe, even when familiar is destroying everyone inside it. Most members of a dysfunctional family adapt by running what I call low-resolution awareness. They agree, consciously or not, to a shared delusion. They have learned to blur the reality of the storm, to survive the silence. They accept the unspoken contract that says we do not talk about this. We do not see this. We smile and we pass the bread. This is not weakness. It is a survival adaptation. Their nervous systems learned early that acknowledging the truth was more dangerous than burying it. So they buried it, and they have been maintaining that burial ever since. But then there is you. Your brain never accepted the contract. You are running a Sentinel Mind, and a Sentinel Mind cannot compute a data mismatch without flagging it. When the information your eyes are seeing directly contradicts the information your family is narrating, your system does not smooth it over. It sounds an alarm. You are a pattern interrupter. And your presence in that family system is a constant, low-frequency threat to the homeostasis they have spent years protecting. Not because you are broken, because you are the only one in the room whose radar is actually working. Now let's look at the specific signals, because if you are watching this, I want you to be able to identify your own architecture in what I am about to say. The first signal is what I call gaslight sensitivity. You have a physical reaction, not just an emotional one, but a full-body, visceral, almost nauseating reaction, when someone tells you that something did not happen. When your high-accuracy radar recorded it in real time. This is your amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain, firing at maximum capacity. Because to a Sentinel Mind, a direct contradiction of observed reality is not just an argument. It is a hardware attack. It is someone attempting to overwrite your data with corrupted information. Your system rejects it the way a body rejects a foreign pathogen. The discomfort you feel is not oversensitivity. It is your integrity refusing to be compromised at the neurological level. That brings us to the second signal, which I call the scapegoat protocol. Here is how it works mechanically. When you name the elephant in the room, the family system experiences a threat. But instead of processing that threat, which would require them to dismantle the shared delusion they have built their entire emotional infrastructure on, they redirect it. They externalize it. They tag you as the origin of the disruption. You become the container for all the collective shame, grief, and unprocessed trauma that the rest of the family refuses to look at directly. Psychologists call this projection. In the rare mind framework, we call it the shadow vessel assignment. They need someone to hold the data errors so the system can keep running clean. And because you were the one who kept pointing at the errors, you became the obvious candidate. The third signal is the difficult label, and I want you to hear this clearly. In a dysfunctional family system, the word difficult is not a description of your behavior. It is a description of your resistance. It is the word the flock uses for a person they can no longer successfully manipulate. When you were compliant, when you were smaller, when you absorbed the narrative without pushing back, you were manageable. The moment your sentinel intelligence developed enough to refuse the script, you became a threat, and threats get labeled. Your refusal to normalize the dysfunction was not rebellion. It was your prefrontal cortex, your brain's strategic command center, finally overriding the fear response and choosing accuracy over approval. That is not a problem, that is growth. They just called it a problem because growth in you meant exposure for them. The fourth signal is high-fidelity pattern detection, and this one runs deep. You saw the cycles before anyone else was willing to admit they were cycles. The addiction that everyone called stress, the emotional manipulation that everyone called passion, the silent rage that everyone called just how he is. You tracked those patterns across years, across holidays, across the same argument happening. Your brain was mapping the terrain, identifying the recurring threats, running predictive simulations based on historical data. And when you brought those findings to the tribe, when you said this is a pattern and it is going to happen again, you were not being dramatic. The punishment you received for that accuracy was not a verdict on your intelligence. It was a measure of their fear. The fifth signal is the outsider's clarity. Because you were never fully absorbed into the system, because you were always slightly outside the shared delusion. It is the reason you understand the family dynamics at a level that feels almost clinical. Your loneliness was your laboratory. And what you built inside it is a level of perceptual clarity that most people spend their entire lives trying to develop and never do. Now let's talk about the mechanism behind the rejection itself, because this is where the data gets important. A dysfunctional family system requires a shadow vessel. It needs one designated member to hold all the unprocessed trauma, the buried secrets, the collective shame, so that the rest of the system can maintain the illusion of health. This is not a conscious decision, it is a systemic function. The family does not sit down and vote on who carries the weight. The system assigns it automatically, almost gravitationally, to the member who is least willing to participate in the denial, which is you. Because your Sentinel Mind kept refusing to carry the data errors without flagging them. When you stopped being willing to hold the weight silently, when you started naming what you saw, you were not just speaking truth. You were crashing their software. You were introducing a variable the system had no protocol to handle. And the system's only response to an unhandled variable is rejection. Your exclusion from the family narrative was never about your worth. It was about your signal being too clear, too high resolution, too accurate for a system that runs on deliberate blur. You were not kicked out of the flock. You outgrew the frequency. So what do you do with all of this? Because awareness without direction is just a more articulate version of pain. And I am not here to leave you with a diagnosis. I am here to give you a mission. The first move is to resign as the auditor. Stop trying to fix a family that has made a generational commitment to the lie. I know the instinct. Your Sentinel hardware was built to detect and correct. Your art, your writing, the community you are slowly, quietly building around you. The ability to see through manufactured reality, to detect fake energy in a room, to track patterns across time and predict outcomes. That is not a burden. That is a competitive advantage. Use it like one. The third move is the one that will change the trajectory of everything. Build what I call the kintsugi bond. Find your chosen flock. Your true tribe is not determined by bloodline. It is determined by frequency. The people who belong in your life are the ones who value the truth as much as you do. The other sentinels, the other cycle breakers, the ones who have also been labeled difficult and dramatic and too much. When you find them, and you will find them, you will feel the difference immediately. There is no performance required, no script to memorize, no temperature to maintain. Just signal meeting signal at the same resolution. That is your real family. And it is waiting for you on the other side of the one you were assigned. You were never the problem. You were the only one in the room with the clarity and the courage to see it. And every year you spent being silenced for that clarity was a year. The system was terrified of what you were capable of. Stop looking for validation from a structure that was architecturally designed to silence you. If you have spent your life as the truth teller, drop a candle in the comments. Let the other whistleblowers know the light is still on. You are not a misfit, you are a pioneer. Stay rare, Sila's out.